On October 8th, we have a much anticipated, but also a strange clash between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn as they continue the rivalry of their fathers 30 years on. I created a video back in July when the fight was first rumoured to have been accepted, and it very much has an element of the promoters and DAZN using nostalgia as a way to get more sign-ups and pay-per-view buys in the UK market, which I guess you could call a smart move from their perspective, and you can check out that video after or before in the description below. However, this video is about the fighters that will step in the ring, this somewhat odd matchup. This probably shouldn't be a fight that is even happening, and the only reason it is possible is because of their fathers' names and legacy, the payday, exposure, and the coverage it will provide. Nevertheless, there is something always intriguing about these types of fights and the questions that get thrown around. One thing is for sure, Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn are not their fathers. They've definitely taken things from them over the years, but they are their own fighters in a completely different era. The big question on everyone's mind is, will the size make a difference? Well, yes. We have seen countless of times smaller men move up in weight, only to struggle and get beat up. But we've also seen men have much success moving up in weight. There are going to be limits for both men in this fight, as it will be fought at a catch weight of 157 pounds. Chris Eubank Sr. has been absent from the promotion and also training his son due to the reports of him being concerned of his son's health, having to drop that weight he hasn't fought at since he was 18 years old. And cutting weight isn't the only issue he's had, but the rehydration clause, which is rumoured he's only allowed to put on 5 more pounds. In my opinion, things like this should be taken out the sport, as this is what can cause long-term brain damage, and it increases the risk of concussion and bleeding when a fighter is more dehydrated. But despite this risk, we've seen this often throughout boxing history, including more recently with Kell Brook versus Amir Khan, or Canelo dropping in weight to fight Mayweather, for example. But overall, the outcomes have very mixed results for either the smaller man or the bigger man going into the fight. But despite this risk from Eubank and Benn, we've seen the mind games of the two act very differently on social media in the lead up to this fight. Eubank has been seen to eat cake, burgers and KFC, while Benn is clearly taking his training a lot more seriously as he bulks up to the 157 pound limit. However, you can't help but think that Eubank may just ignore this rehydration clause and come in heavier to make sure he has a greater advantage. But we will soon find out if this weight issue will be a big deal. Now, let's have a look at both men. Let's start off with Conor Benn. Having followed him from the beginning of his career to now, he is without a doubt a fighter that has developed and improved over the years. If you've watched my other tactical overview videos in the past, you will know I don't like to go too far back in time, as you're only as good as your last fight. However, fighters do tend to pick up tendencies or go back to their natural approach when all else fails. In terms of Benn's approach, he likes to apply pressure for the most part. He is always feinting and giving different looks right from the start before he makes his attacks. He uses constant feints, which can be a nightmare for opponents as they struggle to predict your next move or punch. He does in a way remind me of someone like Joe Frazier at times, where he would use similar feinting tactics to close the distance and to land his power punches up close. However, as much as this is a useful tactic, you can expel a lot of energy doing this, and if your fitness levels are not where they should be, we may start to see Benn slow down and Eubank take advantage in the later rounds. This could play a big factor as Benn is obviously putting on more weight for this fight. You will also notice that Benn is someone that works off the jab often. He'll double jab, go to the body, close the distance, or use it to set up his right hand or start combinations. He is also always looking to throw heavy jabs, and as much as this can cause damage, it can diminish your energy if thrown too often. Once Benn has used his jab to get on the inside or mid-range, this is where he'll look to get to work. He likes to throw body shots before using defensive waist movement in the pocket to get out of the way. However, sometimes you can't help but see Ben get careless when closing the distance, as he does leave himself open to a right hand rushing in or even a counter left hook, which is a punch Eubank Jr. loves to throw. With Eubank being a naturally bigger man, you can't help but see Ben potentially being drawn into a firefight at one point to prove a point, much like his dad Nigel would do during his career. Personally, I think Ben should look to use more movement in this fight. He does have the ability to work behind the jab and has proven to set up big powerful shots. Eubank is also definitely there to be hit, especially if he is having to push the fight, as he can get careless coming into range and leave himself open just as much as Ben. We've also seen Eubank in the past struggle with others using similar tactics, including the likes of George Groves and Billy Joe Saunders. Eubank would visibly get frustrated as he couldn't get near them and try to close the distance, getting caught usually with the backhand coming into range. If Eubank continues his more Roy Jones inspired counterpunching approach, it could be an interesting dynamic of Ben instead pushing the fight, but he will need to be extra careful not to walk him down carelessly, but instead look to set Eubank up with the perfect shot over many rounds, which he has proven he can do. So as you can see from what I've discussed and shown, Ben is in fact a very versatile fighter and does have plenty of ability. However, there's an element of the quality of the opponents he's faced today being past their best or not good enough, which has made Ben stand out so much. But we will obviously soon find out. Now, let's take a look at Chris Eubank Jr. He is obviously the man with the advantage due to the weight. However, he cannot be too arrogant to the point he thinks Ben brings nothing to the table. Personally, I feel Eubank has continually adapted and changed his style over the years. Is he a pressure fighter, a counterpuncher, a brawler? Well, he's actually a really adaptable fighter depending on the situation, when it suits him. But this isn't necessarily a good thing, as you can get caught up in one way of fighting instead of the way you should fight, such as following a game plan. But to be fair to Eubank, he has tried lots of different methods and styles at certain points in his career.
I learned to be smart with the pressure. As a youngster, I was more come forward, take a shot or two, land a shot of my own. Not really thinking about where shots are coming from, what might be coming back. You know, as I've grown, I've learned, I felt. You know, there are going to be shots that are coming back. They're not going to just let you keep going. You know, they're going to throw something back, so you've got to be aware that you've got to be ready to move out of the way, whether that's using your hands or head movement to stop a punch from hitting you.
In more recent years under Jones, he seemed to have set to a more counter-punching style, dropping his hands, looking to time his opponents as they come in. However, with Eubank opting to use Ronnie Davies and his dad for this fight, who has since pulled out, it will be intriguing to see the mentality and the approach. But let's look at both scenarios. If Eubank chooses to go on the back foot, I think he may be surprised by the pressure and versatility of Ben at first. If you look at his last three opponents, they have been nowhere near the level of variation and movement of Ben. For the most part, they have been quite stationary at times and there for him to hit. But he's also proven his punch power is still there, as he managed to knock down Williams 3 times within the first 4 rounds with well-timed heavy shots. And personally, I think this bodes well for him against a smaller welterweight moving up. As I just mentioned, Eubank has been dropping his hands, looking to use counterpunching to great effect, and instead looking to draw on his opponent. He also has a pretty good defense for the most part, opting to use waist movement, lateral footwork, and small linear movement backwards, waiting for his opponent to get into range. And lots of opponents do struggle against his movement in that respect. However, if he chooses the more aggressive approach, this has worked for him in the past against many opponents, and he's really been able to bully some competitors on the inside with some fantastic punch variation from head to body and vice versa. Quite often, previous opponents shell up, take these punches, or try to clench. And in my opinion, Ben simply cannot afford to sit in the ropes or battle Eubank on the inside, or it could spell disaster. We have already seen Ben get caught up in this area in his younger days, and as we all know, Eubank will probably be the stronger man on the inside. Personally, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a bit of both from Eubank in this fight, but if Ben looks to use his feints, movement and jab, I expect Eubank to try tempt him in so he can use his powerful counterpunches. I do expect Ben to start to tire in the later rounds, and this is where Eubank Jr. will probably start to turn up the pressure and use his physical presence to throw those big shots on the inside and mid-range and force Ben into an unnecessary battle. In my opinion, he really needs to make a statement on October 8th. However, going by the last fight against Williams, he himself seemed to just coast the rest of the fight after he knocked him down 3 times, not willing to risk going for the knockout completely. Regardless, he needs to make a statement if he wants another chance at a world title. In terms of my final thoughts and prediction, I think Conor Benn is someone that has made great improvements in the last couple of years, but he's quite simply a much smaller man compared to Eubank. There's no escaping from that. There's also a potential lack of experience compared to Eubank Jr., who, let's be honest, has faced a lot higher caliber of opponents over the years compared to Benn. And I do think we will see a bright start from him, and maybe him even landing some big shots on Eubank, and he will trouble him with his feints and jab. But as the rounds go on, I can see Eubank being able to figure out and time him with counterpunches and potentially hurting him. We've all seen smaller men move up in weight before and get notable wins, and he will need to pull something out the bag like Sugar Ray Leonard did against Lalonde, or pull off an incredible game plan like Pacquiao versus Margarito. However, you never know how Eubank will respond to the catch weight at 157 pounds, and could potentially himself be more fatigued than he think he would be. Regardless, I do think this is still a step too far, and Eubank should get the win before the final bell. All will be revealed very soon. I'd love to hear your predictions in the comments below. Can Ben pull off an incredible upset, or do you think it will be a lot closer than most expect? I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, this has been Jamie from Boxing Life. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.